I'm Nu-Trix, the synth guy, and today we're going to talk about the Digit from multiFX. Now, it's not a synthesizer, it's not a software. Yeah, there's a software part of it because this is a multi-effect processor, which is very special and unique because it's almost a, let's go back in the window, it's almost a modular synthesizer. It's all modular here. You can actually load in your, load the different modules. We'll talk about this. It's really powerful, really fun. If you want to, go deep inside tweaking your stuff, it's really interesting. It comes into two color. You've got the blue and the pink. And what's interesting is this, I don't know all the backstory about it, but the blue used to be called the BEEBO, the pink used to be called the Digit. So you might see Digit and it's the pink one, but technically now, today, it's the same hardware running the same software. But it used to be like two different models at one point with different features. Now it seems to be the same thing and you just pick the color you want. But you might see in store Digit and BEEBO, and today, same thing. Now it's interesting, you've got 3 foot switch on it. You've got the last one, it's a bypass, and you see it change in the window when you say bypass. You've got a touch screen, so you can actually click on stuff right away, go select what you want to select. And so with big fingers, you might want to use a pencil, but still it's fairly efficient even with big fingers like mine. A and B can be assigned to whatever you want, and if you look carefully, there's also a switch between, a value between the two of them. So here you've got D and F. So if you press the 2 at the same time, you have A, B, C, D, and E. You can actually trigger. So it equals 5 switch if you want. These 2 knobs are not volumes. These are assigned to whatever you're clicking on the window. So they're like entry values if you want. So if you click on it, you can easily change. So that's the only thing I would like to have. I would like to have a dedicated knob for volume. So sometimes you change patches and the sound is so loud because you go from something that was nice and soft to something that is very distorted, it's very loud. So having a hardware knob to just turn the volume down really quickly, in my case, would have been very nice a couple of hours ago. At the back, interesting enough, you have the power, you get a USB. So this is mostly for firmware updates and for loading in impulse responses for the convolution reverb and other things you might be able to load in. You've got 2 MIDI in and out, and that's really the one thing I could not test because I can't seem to find the right connector. I have MIDI that has 1/8" connector here. I have 2 of them. They don't react, and I know there's not all of them have the same pinouts, so I'm gonna probably have to look at the store to get a different one and try it differently. So I'll come back with the MIDI, but this also can receive and send MIDI. And you've got 4 connectors, 2 ins and 2 outs, but each of the ins are stereo. So you've got 4 inputs and 4 outputs because stereo in, 1 and 2, 3 and 4, and out, 1 and 2, and out, 3 and 4. So this is a quad processor, 2 parallel processor, 4 mono processors if you want, 1 stereo, another stereo, or even these could also be receiving CV. So if you're into modular synthesis, this could be interesting to actually get CV in and convert that into controlling part of the effects processing. So this is this is really powerful in a very small package. It's very solid. And if you're into editing stuff, that's going to be a real blast to do. So let's actually switch cameras. I'm going to have a over-the-counter camera, which is basically my phone. So I'm gonna put it, first of all, I'm gonna put bypass. So what you're listening now is the sound of the Novation circuit mono station, which is one of my cool analog synth. I have it here. So real analog monophonic synth. I've got this little, with this thing like that. I'm gonna put my headphones so it actually doesn't have loop feedback. So you have it one side because it's mono. Let's actually turn this thing on. So I'm in crunchy rig here. So I have these two things happening. I've got the foot switch here. If I turn it on, it's going to turn on the mix of the stereo reverb going back into the mono cab. Actually, this one here. The reverb coming in. And this one's going to be bringing in the delay into the mono cab. So it's kind of a weird little thing because what you have is so let's actually, the logic is like if you, let's say start from an empty preset, you're going to press plus, and then you can load effects, input outputs, controls, and synthesis weird. Synthesis weird, just for fun, you've got ladder, low pass filters, different type of filters, a granular generator, you've got a K-org, you've got a K-org low pass filter and high pass filter. You've got a micro OSC, which is micro oscillator. It's actually pretty powerful. Meta modulation, multi resonator. It's a OG AF low pass filter inspired by vintage American designs. Pitch shifter, a resonator, time stretching, a Huberheim filter. I mean, he's pretty creative with the names. And we have a wave folder here. So these are kind of the modules to create sounds if you want to do synthesis with this, because it's possible to do synthesis. Let's say we go to micro OSC, for example. Micro OSC, if you click on it, you've got oscillator here. You've got, and for each of them, each of these different type of generators, you've got a tone. You can control the value of it, and you get modulation. So there's already part of it, some modulation happening in it if you want like a vibrato, for example. So you've got classic waveform, wave shaping, FM for two operators, granular, harmonic, wavetable, chords, vowels, granular cloud, filtered noise, particle noise, or inharmonic string modeling, modal resonator, analog bass drum model, snare, and analog hi-hat model. So this is, it's surprisingly, I didn't expect that out of an effects processor, because this is a lot more than an effect processor. Of course, it is an effect processor. Controls, we've got envelopes, we've got ADSR, you've got attenuator, you've got chaos controllers for random sources, you've got differences, drum patterns. Like what? Yeah, there's a drum pattern, and I'll show you. There's envelope follower, LFO, max min. So a lot of things that you would see in some type of modular kit, either virtual or hardware. Step sequencer here, and there's also an external. So if you see like this one, you got step sequencer and step sequencer external. So this one has an external trigger. So each time you want a step to go to the next step needs to be triggered by, example, the foot switch if you want, or it could be something coming in into the input that is a CV or a gate. So really, it's a modular approach that has most of the module you would have in a synthesis, but also you have effects. So you've got convolution reverb, you've got an amp bass, swell, bit mangle. It's really a cool crusher. It's more complex than just a basic crusher. Very noisy. It can be really loud. You've got a multi-dimensional chorus for an 8 voice. You've got the same thing with an external input. It means that you can have an LFO sending CV to it. When they say CV, it could be just internal CV. It doesn't mean it comes from external stuff. But it means that that chorus can be controlled by another piece of module if you want. And you get delay, Doppler, panner, flanger with external control, freeze, harmonic, tremolo with external control or without, J chorus, which is basically a Juno chorus. You got a looping delay, a mono EQ, a mono cab, a cabinet for simulation. And then these are using impulse responses. So they actually measured hardware. So it sounds. I'm not a guitar player, so I wouldn't say, oh, it sounds exactly like this piece of cabinet with this microphone. But when you go through the list, you will have like this piece of hardware cabinet with this microphone in front of it, or this speaker with this other microphone from a Neumann microphone. So they have all these impulse responses for these type of situation, and you can just go through them. So this is like buying like tons of different hardware boxes. Like it's because of the impulse responses in them, it's really powerful. And you could even do your own. You cannot do it with this, meaning you would need to do your own impulse response by yourself and then load it into this, and it would just apply it to the sound. So if you want to know how to do impulse response by yourself, Google it. There's a lot of places it's going to explain how you do it. Reverb, reverse, rotary speakers, saturators, EQ cabinets, stereo compressor, stereo phaser, stereo reverb. So there's just a lot of them. And that's just effects. You also have in and out. In and out, you've got CV to MIDI CC. So you can have a CV input hardware turned into MIDI. You've got foot switch. You want to control them if you want. You got MIDI CC, so you can receive MIDI. You can receive MIDI clock in and out, so you can generate it. You can receive it. MIDI note to CV, so you can convert that. You can also polynote to CV. So it's really, again, it's a modular approach. You can do a lot with that. And we said control. We saw all of it. So let's actually dive in and try another example. And so, for example, this one. Okay, the first one. Like weird wobbling sound, but it's a cool thing. Let's try another one. Acid for breakfast, for example. There's a lot of stuff happening. You've got a granular here. Let's say you want to change this. Again, you press on it and you can just do it with your finger. Or you can use this for the fine tune, and this becomes the main or the coarse value. Chorus, for example. It's always a classic. Everybody wants a chorus. Let's have bypass. Now just have it on one here because, well, it's going to be, because it's mono out. But it's going to go to the mono out in, and then it's going to become stereo now because I'm going to turn it. And this one is a cool delay. It's a chorus built by delay, which is normal. And then you can decide how each LFO is changing the way each of the delay is changing separately. So more control than in classic chorus. Let's try other things like basic delay. Like this one is in a mono in, mono out, only on one side, which is logical because thinking about this, if it's just a guitar coming in and out, then one in, one out, you're happy. It's mono stuff. But if you're looking for something that, I mean, this could be seen as 4 different mono processing, or 1 mono to stereo, and 2 mono, or like, it's just, the logic is really interesting. Now, there's a question about how much you can load in, because it's a CPU, it's a computer, it's a little box running all of that. Let's look at more complex stuff. Now this one, before we go to complex stuff, this is interesting. This one has, you get time stretch and a mix, and you get... So this is, for what I understand and for the way I look at it, this is part of these effects where you use them, part of your building of your song. They're part of the creative process. It makes me think of the Eventide plugins. They're not your traditional, I would say, mixing effects. So you just put that, oh, you need some reverb, you need some delay, you need some compression just to clean up your tracks. No, you include them inside your creative process because they're part of the sound. Now, if I'm playing this sound, I'm playing the synth and the effect at the same time because the effect is giving all that. If I turn it off, that's it. If I turn it on, get a whole other space I'm playing with now. So it's really interesting, and this is really the way I approach it, and I think that most people who are interested into this are looking to. So there's two things. Of course, if you're the type of person who likes to have, you know, an effect pedal and just like use that, turn the knob and be happy, then this is too much because there's a lot of things you can do. But at the same time, if you say, well, I don't really care, as long as the presets are good, I'm going to tell you, they're good. They're really good. So let's actually try. I mean, there's just so much in them. Let's say let's fuzz mangle. Bring that down a little bit. So this is a the Biff Mangler. And if you know me, I just said it cool. And this one is really nasty. This one here. So that's what I'm saying. When we need a volume on this, it becomes really loud. So this, I know it's in the manual. They say you should put a compressor at the back, and I agree with you. You should put a compressor, but then why don't you put it in the preset and show everybody how they should do it? Because this is just like, if you go that way, it becomes so loud and noisy. It's just mind-boggling. Let's try. There's some of these, oh, like the dotted tape. That's really interesting. See, even the subname of the subtitle is the fact that it's a tap tempo for the delay. It just works and it sounds good. And again, if you go into it, you've got the delay value. Okay, go back. You have the warmth, which is a kind of a tape drive tube blend at the end. So just like warming of the sound. This is nasty. This is so noisy. This one, 24 delay. So this one loads 24 different delays into one. Imagine that. So of course it takes more time to load. So if you're wanting to switch rapidly between two sounds, two songs, or two sounds, or two processing between two sounds. So you see this is a little bit too long, but there's a reason why. You get 24. And it uses 92% of CPU usage, so it's really filling out the machine. So it's just an example. I mean, I'm not sure how useful this is unless you want to do these big, massive pads of sounds. So this is just playing off of this, nothing else. So this is really just this playing. It is just playing. So how does it work? Well, you've got the first macro OSC is playing a bass drum. Second one is playing a hi-hat. And third one is playing a snare. And each of them, if you look at the outputs, well, this is all the sources you can connect. The drum accent, the trigger, the hi-hat and snare, you connect it to the right one. And if you look in the pattern itself, wait a sec, let's turn off this thing, go here. Well, there's like presets of drum rhythms, and you can actually have more density of bass drum, less bass drum, more hi-hat. Less chaos, more chaos. I don't want too much chaos. So it's really, I mean, it's another thing I never thought about. And if you want to change the sound, well, you go into this, you go into tone, and you can change. Again, you can. So it's very powerful. Even, I mean, again, you could convert this. You could, I don't know how to stop this. You could even disconnect these three and connect MIDI instead and use MIDI to trigger these sounds. Or you could use CV and gates connecting at the back here and say, well, it's going to be CV and gates. You get 4 of them, so these 3 could be triggered from something else. So it goes beyond just being a modular effect processor. It's also a sound generator. It's a modulator. And the fact you've got 4 inputs and they can be CV or audio, and there's MIDI, it's in a category by itself because there's the open world of just plug it the way you want, and the interface with the rest of the world is really nice. My 2 cents, I would like to have real 5-pinned in MIDI connectors on this and a volume knob. That would be like one of the best things to complete this box. But honestly, I'm gonna have to dive more into this because it's very complex and there's a lot of levels in this, and at one point, it's just a question of how much time you spit in. But if you want to have this modular approach, this really goes well with the Eurorack or any type of synth that has modular, CV out, CV in. It's just like crazy what you can do with that. That's it. Hope this is useful, and put your comments below and stay safe. We'll see you next time. Cheers.